Vincent Marcello walks into Judge Caprio's courtroom wearing a $3,000 suit that fits him like armor, and the first thing you notice is not his expensive Italian leather shoes or the gold Rolex on his wrist, but the complete absence of shame in his eyes. He is 47 years old, tanned from what his lawyer will describe as a recent business trip to the Caribbean, with perfectly styled hair and manicured nails that suggest a man who has never done manual labor in his life. When he sits at the defendant's table, he does not look like someone facing human trafficking charges. He looks like a CEO annoyed at having to attend a board meeting. His lawyer, Patricia Chen, is a partner at one of the most expensive firms in the state, the kind of attorney who charges $800 an hour and has never lost a high-profile case. She sits beside him with the calm confidence of someone who has rehearsed every answer, anticipated every question, and believes money can buy any outcome. But what neither of them understands yet is that Judge Caprio has read the case file, all 463 pages of it, and the details in those pages have kept him awake for 2 nights. Because Vincent Marcello is not here for a single crime. He is here because federal agents uncovered a trafficking operation that spanned 8 states and destroyed the lives of 42 young women over 6 years. Women who were promised jobs, education, and a better life, only to find themselves trapped in a nightmare they could not escape. The youngest victim was 15 years old when Marcello's recruiters found her. The oldest was 23. Most were between 17 and 19 at that vulnerable age where desperation meets hope and predators know exactly how to exploit the gap between the two. So if you are wondering what happens when a human trafficker sits in front of a judge who believes some crimes are so evil, they strip away your right to walk free ever again, stay with me. Because what you are about to witness is not just a sentencing. It is the moment when a man who treated human beings as merchandise learns that there are consequences even money cannot erase. Like this video, if you believe human trafficking is one of the most evil crimes imaginable. Now let us get into this because it is going to be devastating in all the ways it should be. It is Thursday morning at 10 a.m. in the Providence Municipal Court. The bailiff announces the United States of America versus Vincent Anthony Marcello. Marcello stands with the casual grace of someone who has been in courtrooms before and walked out free every time. He buttons his suit jacket, adjusts his tie, and approaches the defendant's table like he is strolling into a restaurant he owns. Judge Caprio enters and everyone rises. When they sit, Judge Caprio takes a long moment to study Marcello before opening the case file. Mr. Marcello, you are charged with human trafficking, conspiracy to commit human trafficking, forced labor, document servitude, and money laundering. These are federal charges carrying a maximum sentence of life in prison. Do you understand the severity of what you are facing? Marcello leans back slightly, crosses one leg over the other, and his voice when he speaks is smooth, educated, almost bored. Your Honor, I understand the charges. I do not understand why I am here, but I understand what the government is claiming. It is a calculated response. Acknowledge the question while undermining the legitimacy of the prosecution. Patricia Chen nods approvingly. Judge Caprio's expression does not change. You do not understand why you are here? No, Your Honor. I run a legitimate international employment agency. I connect workers with opportunities in the United States. Everything I do is documented, legal, and in compliance with labor laws. These charges are based on misunderstandings and the testimony of disgruntled former employees who are trying to avoid their own legal problems. Judge Caprio opens the file to a specific page. Mr. Marcello, I have testimony from 19 women who say you promised them legal work visas, hotel jobs, and wages of $15 an hour. When they arrived in the United States, You confiscated their passports, forced them to work in escort services and illegal massage parlors, and threatened them with deportation or violence if they tried to leave. Are these women all lying? Marcello does not even hesitate. Your Honor, these women came to this country seeking opportunity. Some of them made poor choices once they arrived. Some got involved in activities I had no knowledge of. My agency provided placement services. What they did after placement is not my responsibility. Patricia Chen jumps in. Your Honor, my client operates an employment placement service. The alleged activities these women describe occurred at third-party establishments my client has no control over. The prosecution is trying to hold him responsible for the actions of independent business owners. Judge Caprio turns to the prosecutor. Let us be clear about what the evidence shows, Ms. Rodriguez. The federal prosecutor, Sandra Rodriguez, is a career prosecutor who has spent 15 years building trafficking cases. She stands with a folder full of evidence that she has been waiting to present. Your Honor, Mr. Marcello did not run an employment agency. He ran a sophisticated trafficking operation that specifically targeted vulnerable young women in Eastern Europe, South America, and Southeast Asia. His recruiters would find women in desperate situations, poverty, abusive homes, limited education, and offer them what seemed like legitimate opportunities in America. She displays photos on the courtroom screen. Young women, smiling, hopeful, holding paperwork that promised them a better future. These are recruitment photos. The women were told they would work in hotels, restaurants, or retail. They were told they would earn enough money to support their families back home. They were told everything would be legal and safe. The next slide shows different photos, the same women, but now they look exhausted, frightened, trapped. This is what happened after Mr. Marcello brought them to the United States. He confiscated their passports immediately upon arrival, telling them it was for safekeeping. He housed them in overcrowded apartments where 6 to 8 women shared a single bedroom. He told them they owed him for travel expenses, visa processing, and housing, debts that somehow grew larger every month despite them working constantly. Marcello shifts in his seat, but maintains his composed expression. Then he placed them in escort services, massage parlors, and private homes where they were forced to provide sexual services. When they objected, he threatened them with deportation, violence, and harm to their families back home. Judge Caprio looks at Marcello. Mr. Marcello, you have heard these allegations. Do you deny them? Absolutely, Your Honor. These women were independent contractors who made their own choices about what work to accept. If they ended up in unfortunate situations, that is tragic, but it is not my fault. Let me show you something. Judge Caprio signals to the prosecutor, who plays audio from a wiretapped phone call. Marcello's voice comes through the speakers, clear and unmistakable. Listen to me carefully. You work where I tell you to work. You do what I tell you to do. If you try to leave, I will have you arrested for illegal prostitution and deported. Your family back home, I know where they live. You understand? The woman on the other end of the call is crying. Please, you promised this would be hotel work. You said it would be legal. I promised you a way out of poverty. This is it. Now stop complaining and do your job, or I will find someone who appreciates the opportunity. The audio ends. The courtroom is silent. Marcello's expression finally changes, the smooth confidence replaced by something harder, colder. That conversation is out of context, Your Honor. That woman had been causing problems, threatening to go to authorities with false claims. I was trying to convince her to honor her contract obligations. Judge Caprio's voice cuts like ice. Her contract obligations to provide sexual services? Her obligation to fulfill the terms of her employment placement, which involved sexual services. Marcello does not answer. Patricia Chen intervenes. Your Honor, my client has never directly operated any establishment where illegal activities occurred. He provided placement services. What happened at those establishments? Ms. Chen, your client is on tape, threatening a woman with deportation and violence if she does not continue providing sexual services at a location he placed her. That is human trafficking. The legal gymnastics you are attempting do not change that fact. Judge Caprio turns back to Marcello. I want you to understand something, Mr. Marcello. I have read the testimony of every single woman your operation trafficked. 19 of them agreed to testify, but there are 23 others who are too traumatized or too afraid. I have read about the 15-year-old girl you recruited from Moldova who believed she was coming to America to work in a restaurant. I have read about how you kept her locked in an apartment and forced her to see 12 to 15 men a day. I have read about how she tried to escape 3 times, and each time your people found her and beat her. Do you remember her? Marcello's jaw tightens. I do not know who you are talking about. Her name is Anya. She is 17 now in a treatment facility for trauma, and she will never fully recover from what you did to her. But you do not remember her because to you, she was not a person. She was inventory. Subscribe to Judge Stories if you believe human traffickers deserve the harshest punishment the law allows. Judge Caprio opens another section of the file. Let me walk through your operation systematically, Mr. Marcello. You had recruiters in 6 countries. They would target young women, specifically those who were poor, uneducated, and desperate. Your recruiters would offer them contracts for legitimate work in the United States, complete with fake documentation that looked official. Is this accurate? My company provided international placement services. Answer the question. Did you target vulnerable women with false promises? Marcello looks at his attorney, who nods slightly. My recruiters identified candidates who would benefit from opportunities in America. Vulnerable women, desperate women, women who had no way to verify your promises and no resources to escape once they realized the truth. Yes or no? Yes. Once these women agreed, you arranged their travel. You paid for their flights, their visas, which were often fraudulent or obtained through bribery, and you kept meticulous records of every expense. Why? Standard business practice. We advanced costs that would be repaid through their earnings. Except their earnings never covered the debt, did they? Because you inflated every expense, added interest, charged them for housing and food at rates far above actual cost. A woman who started with a debt of $5,000 would find herself owing $15,000 after 6 months of working every day. How is that possible? Marcello shrugs. Cost of living in America is high. These women needed housing, food, transportation. They needed you to stop lying to them. Let me read you something. Judge Caprio picks up a testimony transcript. This is from Maria Santos, age 19, when you trafficked her. She says, I worked 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. I was told I would earn $15 an hour. Instead, Mr. Marcello said I owed him for travel, housing, food, and fees I never agreed to. After 6 months, he said I still owed $20,000. I asked to see the accounting, and he laughed and said if I caused problems, he would have me deported, and my family back home would pay my debt instead. So I kept working, kept hoping eventually I could pay it off and be free. But the debt only grew. I realized I would never be free unless I escaped. Judge Caprio looks up from the transcript. She did escape, Mr. Marcello. She ran to a police station and told them everything. That is how this investigation started, because one brave 19-year-old girl decided being arrested was better than being your slave. Marcello's voice turns defensive. These women signed contracts. They agreed to terms. If they did not like the arrangement, they could have left. They could not leave because you had their passports. For safekeeping, because you were holding them prisoner. When Maria escaped, did you try to find her? Marcello does not answer. I will answer for you. Yes, you did. You sent 2 of your enforcers to the police station to intimidate her into recanting her statement. When that did not work, you called her mother in Honduras and threatened to have her family hurt if Maria did not stop cooperating with investigators. That phone call is recorded, Mr. Marcello. Would you like me to play it? Patricia Chen stands. Your Honor, we object to this line of questioning. These allegations... These are not allegations, Ms. Chen. These are documented facts supported by recordings, testimony, and financial records. Your client can object all he wants, but the evidence is overwhelming. Judge Caprio continues. Mr. Marcello, over 6 years, you trafficked 42 women. The youngest was 15. The oldest was 23. Most were between 17 and 19. You specifically targeted that age because they were old enough to work, but young enough to be controlled. Is that accurate? I never specifically targeted anyone based on age. Your recruitment guidelines seized from your office literally say preferred age range 17 to 21. Younger is more compliant, older asks too many questions. Those are your words, Mr. Marcello, typed, printed, and distributed to your recruiters. Marcello has no response. These 42 women generated approximately $8 million in revenue over 6 years. After expenses you paid to the establishments where they worked, you personally profited approximately $3 million. That is $71,000 per victim. You sold human beings and made millions. It was not like that. Then tell me what it was like. And for the first time, Marcello's composure fully cracks. His voice rises, defensive and angry. You want to know what it was like? These women would have stayed in poverty for their entire lives. They would have had no opportunities, no future, nothing. I gave them a chance to come to America, to make money, to provide for their families. Yes, the work was difficult. Yes, the conditions were not ideal, but it was better than what they had. I was helping them. The rationalization is so complete, so thoroughly believed, that for a moment the courtroom is stunned into silence. Judge Caprio breaks it. You were helping them by forcing 15-year-old girls to have sex with strangers 12 hours a day? They knew what the work entailed. They were told they would work in restaurants and hotels. They were lied to, Mr. Marcello. You cannot help people by lying to them, trapping them, and selling their bodies. Your Honor, you do not understand how the world works. These women came from nothing. In their countries, they had no future. I gave them opportunity. You gave them trauma they will carry for the rest of their lives. You gave them diseases, physical injuries, psychological scars that will never heal. You gave them nightmares where they still smell the places you forced them to work, still hear the voices of the men you sold them to. That is what you gave them. Marcello tries to regain his composure. Your Honor, if I could just explain my business model. I do not want to hear about your business model. I want you to answer one question honestly. Do you believe what you did was wrong? The question hangs in the air. Marcello looks at his lawyer, at the prosecutor, at the judge. And then he says something that will define the rest of this proceeding. I believe I operated in a legal grey area that the government has chosen to prosecute because they do not understand the complexities of international labor placement. It is not denial exactly, but it is not admission either. It is the answer of a man who has convinced himself that trafficking human beings is just business. Judge Caprio closes the file. Mr. Marcello, I am going to do something I rarely do. I'm going to have you hear directly from one of your victims before I impose sentence. Bailiff, please bring in Maria Santos. The courtroom doors open, and a young woman enters. She is small, maybe 5 feet 2 inches, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She is wearing a simple blue dress, and she walks to the witness stand with her eyes fixed on the floor. She does not look at Marcello. She cannot. Miss Santos, thank you for being here. I know this is difficult. Can you tell the court what happened to you? Maria takes a shaky breath. When she speaks, her voice is soft, accented, but determined. I was 19. I lived in Honduras with my mother and 3 younger brothers. My father was dead. We were very poor. I worked in a factory making $4 a day, and it was not enough. A woman came to the factory and said she could help me get a job in America. Hotel work, she said. $15 an hour. I could send money home, help my family. It sounded like a miracle. She pauses, gathering strength. She showed me papers, a contract. Everything looked real. She said a company in America would sponsor my visa, pay for my travel, and I would work in a hotel in New York. I would make enough money to help my mother, maybe even bring my brothers to America one day. I believed her because I wanted to, because I was desperate, and she was offering hope. When I arrived in New York, a man picked me up at the airport. Not the woman who recruited me, a different person. He took my passport and said it was for processing my work visa. He drove me to an apartment in Queens where 7 other girls were living. Small apartment, just 2 bedrooms. We slept on mattresses on the floor. Maria's voice starts to shake, but she continues. The next day, the man, I learned later his name was Vincent Marcello, came to the apartment. He told us we owed him money, travel costs, visa processing, housing, food. I owed $7,000, he said. I would work it off, he said. But the work was not in a hotel. She finally looks at Marcello, and her eyes are full of pain and anger. He took me to a massage parlor. He told me I would provide services to clients. When I said that was not the agreement, when I said I wanted to go home, he laughed. He said I owed him money, and I would work until the debt was paid. He said if I tried to leave, he would have me arrested for illegal prostitution and call my mother and tell her I was a whore. He said if I caused problems, my brothers would pay for it. Marcello stares at the table, refusing to look at her. I worked there for 8 months, every day, sometimes 12, 14 hours. Men would come, and I had to do whatever they wanted. I tried to refuse once, and the manager beat me and called Mr. Marcello. He came to the apartment that night and told me if I ever refused again, he would send me back to Honduras with broken legs so everyone would know what happens to girls who do not appreciate opportunities. Her voice breaks. I was 19 years old, Your Honor. I was in a country where I did not speak the language well, with no passport, no money, and no one to help me. Every day I thought about my mother and my brothers, and I told myself I just had to survive until I paid the debt. But the debt never got smaller. It only grew. After 6 months, Mr. Marcello said I owed $15,000. I realized then that I would never be free unless I ran. So I ran. I waited until the manager was not watching, and I ran to a police station. I was so scared they would arrest me, but I did not care anymore. Being in jail was better than what Mr. Marcello had done to me. The police helped me. They connected me with federal agents. I told them everything, and Mr. Marcello tried to make me stop. He called my mother and threatened her. He sent people to scare me, but I did not stop, because if I did, the next girl he brought from Honduras would go through what I went through. She looks directly at Marcello now. You told me you were helping me. You told me I was lucky to have this opportunity, but you were not helping me. You were destroying me. Every day I worked for you, I died a little bit. I have nightmares every night. I cannot be touched without panicking. I cannot trust anyone. You took a 19-year-old girl who just wanted to help her family, and you turned her into someone who is afraid of everything. That is what you did. That is who you are. The courtroom is silent, except for Maria's quiet crying. Judge Caprio's voice is gentle. Thank you, Miss Santos. What you have done today, testifying, facing your trafficker, takes extraordinary courage. I want you to know that your testimony has helped us hold Mr. Marcello accountable. Maria nods, wipes her eyes, and walks out of the courtroom without looking back. Marcello sits very still, and for the first time, he looks small in his expensive suit. Judge Caprio turns to him. Mr. Marcello, you just heard directly from one of your victims. You heard what you did to her. Do you have anything to say? Marcello is quiet for a long time. Then, quietly, I am sorry she feels that way. It is not an apology. It is deflection. You are sorry she feels that way? Judge Caprio's voice is sharp now. Not sorry for what you did, sorry for how she feels about it. Your Honor, I never intended— Your intentions do not matter, Mr. Marcello. Your actions do, and your actions were to traffic 42 young women, force them into sexual slavery, threaten them, abuse them, and profit from their suffering. Whatever you intended is irrelevant compared to what you actually did. Judge Caprio opens the sentencing guidelines. Mr. Marcello, I have been a judge for many years. I have sentenced murderers, drug dealers, rapists, and thieves, but human trafficking is among the most evil crimes I have ever encountered because it treats people as property. It takes vulnerable human beings and reduces them to commodities. It destroys lives systematically and without remorse. And you, Mr. Marcello, did this to 42 women over 6 years while convincing yourself you were helping them. The sentencing guidelines for your crimes suggest 25 to 30 years. The prosecution has recommended 30 years in federal prison. Your attorney has asked for leniency, citing your lack of prior criminal record and your contributions to your community. I have considered all of this carefully. Patricia Chen sits forward, hopeful. And I have decided that 30 years is not enough. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Chen looks shocked. Your Honor, the guidelines do not account for the scale and cruelty of your client's operation. They do not account for the 15-year-old girl he trafficked. They do not account for 42 destroyed lives. They do not account for the fact that your client, even after hearing directly from his victim, could not muster a genuine apology. Judge Caprio looks at Marcello. Vincent Anthony Marcello, I am sentencing you to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. Marcello's face goes white. His lawyer jumps to her feet. Your Honor, life without parole is reserved for the most extreme cases. This is an extreme case, Ms. Chen. Your client trafficked 42 women, including minors. He forced them into sexual slavery. He threatened them, abused them, and profited millions from their suffering. If that does not qualify as extreme, I do not know what does. Your Honor, we will appeal. You are welcome to appeal. But this sentence stands. Additionally, Mr. Marcello will forfeit all assets connected to his trafficking operation, his homes, his cars, his bank accounts. Everything purchased with blood money will be seized and used to compensate his victims. Furthermore, he will be prohibited from any contact with his victims or their families. Any attempt to intimidate, threaten, or contact them will result in additional charges. Judge Caprio closes the file. Mr. Marcello, you came into this courtroom in an expensive suit, believing your money and your lawyers could protect you from the consequences of your crimes. You sat at that table with no remorse, no shame, no understanding of the evil you have done. You heard directly from a woman whose life you destroyed, and the best you could offer was that you are sorry she feels that way. But this courtroom is where your money stops working. This is where your rationalization stops mattering. This is where a 19-year-old girl who you tried to break gets justice. You will spend the rest of your life in prison, and every day you will wake up knowing that the freedom you stole from 42 women is the same freedom you lost forever. Marcello tries to speak, but no words come out. The federal marshals approach. Mr. Marcello, you are remanded to federal custody immediately. Do you understand? He nods, numbly. The marshals put handcuffs on his wrists, the same wrists that once wore a $15,000 watch. They lead him toward the door, and as he passes the prosecutor's table, he glances at the photos of his victims still displayed on the screen. 42 young faces looking out from the photographs. 42 lives he destroyed. He looks away quickly and is led out of the courtroom, out of the life he built on suffering, and into a prison cell where he will spend every remaining day. Judge Caprio sits quietly after Marcello is removed. Then he addresses the courtroom one final time. Human trafficking is a crime that should shake us all. These are not victimless offenses. These are not just business deals gone wrong. These are human beings, daughters, sisters, someone's child, who were targeted because they were vulnerable and exploited because they were powerless. Today, the law gave them power. Today, justice was served. And today, 42 women can know that the man who destroyed their lives will never be free to hurt anyone else. Vincent Marcello walked into that courtroom believing his wealth, his lawyers, and his justifications would protect him from the consequences of trafficking 42 women into sexual slavery. He walked out in handcuffs, sentenced to life in prison without parole, stripped of every asset he gained from his victims' suffering. Within weeks, his entire operation is dismantled. Federal agents arrest 23 associates, recruiters, enforcers, and establishment owners who profited from his trafficking network. His $3 million in assets is seized and distributed among his victims for counseling, medical care, and restitution. Maria Santos uses her share to bring her mother and brothers to the United States legally. She enrolls in community college, studying social work because she wants to help other trafficking victims find their way back to safety. She still has nightmares, still struggles with trust, but she is building a life on her own terms. The other victims begin their own healing journeys. Some return to their home countries, some stay in America. All carry scars that will take years to heal, but they also carry something else, the knowledge that they survived, that they spoke truth, and that their trafficker will never walk free again. Marcello's life sentence becomes a landmark case cited in trafficking prosecutions across the country as proof that courts are finally taking these crimes as seriously as they deserve. The message is clear: if you traffic human beings, if you profit from suffering, if you treat people as property, you will lose your freedom forever. In his cell, Marcello has a lot of time to think about the empire he built on broken lives. He has time to remember every face, every threat, every moment he chose profit over humanity. He has time to understand what Judge Caprio told him, that no amount of money, no expensive lawyer, no rationalization changes the fundamental evil of what he did. And he has the rest of his life to carry that understanding, locked away where he can never hurt anyone again. If you believe human traffickers deserve life in prison for destroying lives, like this video. If you want to see more stories where Judge Caprio delivers justice for the most vulnerable victims, subscribe to my channel. Justice Talks, and check out the other videos on my channel. See you in the next video. Stay healthy